Today, I'm gonna teach you how to play Project Zomboid and not die, at least for a little while. Even though there's a lot to know about the game, you only really need to overcome 5 key obstacles in order to survive, and I'm gonna show you how. Let's start with the first obstacle. Moodles. This is one of the core game mechanics you're not going to want to ignore. The Moodle system is going to influence everything your character is able to do. It's a little bit like The Sims, but with more serious consequences. There are 23 Moodles in total, and they can be broken down more simply into survival meters like hunger, thirst, tiredness, mood, comfort, and sickness or injury. Now, this game is heavily modeled on real life, so you can pretty much guess the outcome of each, but there are a few that need your urgent attention if you do see them. Those are bleeding, endurance, and injured. Now, bleeding can kill off your character pretty quickly. You're going to want to apply a bandage as quickly as you can to stop it. Endurance will reduce your fighting speed and can disable running altogether. It will go away on its own with time and a little quicker with rest. Injury isn't a big deal at lower levels of severity, but you need to investigate why you're losing health and hopefully resolve it before it becomes critical. Also, has a cold can be a little bit of a pain to manage because your character will attract zombies with their coughing. Now, the rest of the Moodles are less deadly immediately, but any Moodle, if ignored long enough, will have some serious consequences. An easy way to tell the severity of a Moodle is to look at the color of the background. The more red the background, the more critical the issue. To give your character the best fighting chance, try to keep them as healthy and happy as possible, especially before going into combat. Sleep if they're tired, eat if they're hungry, and don't carry too much so they're able to run away if needed. Now, some traits and professions can make some Moodles easier to manage, but it will always come at a cost. Now let's move on to obstacle 2, combat. The only thing standing between you and total world domination is the zombies. They don't look like much at first, kind of slow and a little stupid, but in big numbers they are a force to be reckoned with, and this game likes big numbers. You only really have 2 options to deal with them, fight or run away. Out of the 2, fighting is more reliable. Now, by default, zombies will cluster into groups of about 20 and then wander around somewhat aimlessly, smacking windows and doors if they come across them. They will attempt to follow all sounds they hear, and they are able to see very well in the direction they're facing. Once they spot the player, they will chase them pretty relentlessly. When the first zombie spots you, you'll need to choose whether to run or fight. If you choose to run, you'll need to find a way to break line of sight as soon as possible, since the zombie will follow you in a straight line forever. Try going around buildings, through forests, or jumping over fences. The risk here is that you might run into more groups of zombies in the process. They're pretty much everywhere in cities. Remember, your walking speed is fast enough to keep distance with them for the most part, so sprint only when necessary. The longer you take to escape the chase, the more chance your character will become exhausted, which is one of the danger Moodles. It'll slow your movement speed and eventually disable your ability to run. With a horde chasing you, that can result in a quick death. It's always best to have a pre-cleared area ready for tactical retreat if you need it. But for that, you're gonna need to learn to fight. Now, there are a ton of techniques that people use for combat. I'm gonna try and keep it as simple as possible since a lot of it comes down to settings and practice. I'll go through how to simplify the combat with settings a little later in the video. Now, at its core, Zomboid combat relies on patience, good positioning, and timing. This can be a challenge if you're new to the game and not used to the isometric perspective. To enter into combat mode, hold right-click. This will have your character raise their weapon. From here, it'll be easier to swing and to turn around. You can also use this to look ahead and scope out zombie groups around you. Once you find a group, approach carefully and stay low. Try to catch the attention of 1 or 2 zombies to pull them away from the horde. You can do this by walking into their line of sight for a moment and then just luring them back to a safe area. From here, it's just a matter of timing and positioning. Attack from combat stance while walking backwards to maintain distance and avoid being grabbed. Make sure to keep your cursor behind the zombie so you don't accidentally turn around. You can also use fences and windows strategically since zombies will always stumble while going through them. If you have the option, try to use longer weapons since it'll give you more reach and room for error, and avoid fighting more than 2 or 3 zombies at a time. If you pull too many, disengage, lose them, and try again. A lack of patience will be your biggest enemy here. As you start to feel more confident, you'll be able to take on larger groups. The third obstacle you'll need to overcome is skill development. Like any RPG, you'll need to level up your skills if you want to progress in the game. In Zomboid, your character learns by doing, so you'll need to invest some time if you want to learn new skills. Some actions and abilities are locked behind skill levels, and they can be very useful for survival. If you level up electrical and mechanics, you can learn to hotwire cars. and carpentry will allow you to build and secure a base. There are a couple ways to level up your skills. The easiest is by watching TV. No, I'm serious. There's a channel in Project Zomboid called Life and Living, which plays educational shows for the first 9 days of the apocalypse. Watching the shows will give you direct experience towards a specific category. So, for example, watching the cook show will give you experience towards cooking. Not all skills can be learned like this, but do try to catch the shows if you can. They'll play every day at 6 AM, midday, and 6 PM. Another way to passively level skills is through watching VHS tapes, which you can find out in the world. The best place to look for these is in a retail VHS store in town. I'll link a list to all the useful tapes you can find in the description below. The other way to learn skills is simply by doing. Every time you run, make a salad, or swing a weapon, you'll get a little experience towards that category. Some skills, mainly combat related, can only be learned like this. You can also boost how quickly you learn skills by reading some skill books. So if you read a book on carpentry and then watch an episode of woodcraft on TV, you'll gain more experience from that episode. So just to clarify, TV and VHS give you direct experience, while books increase the experience multiplier. Next, you'll need to learn how to tackle in-game events. In the next 2 sections, I'm going to talk about in-game events that will contain spoilers. If you prefer to be surprised, skip ahead to the game's settings section using the timestamps. Now, the scariest event in Project Zomboid is by far the helicopter event. If you make it past this great filter, you're well on your way to surviving the first month. The helicopter will spawn sometime between days 6 and 9, and will fly around searching for survivors. If it spots you, it'll hover above you for the rest of the day. The noise will draw every single zombie in the area, creating a massive horde. There are 2 ways to handle this: run or hide. Now, the easiest thing to do is just to stay inside. If the helicopter never spots you, it'll fly around all day, pulling zombies around the area. They won't target you if they don't know where you are. The safest place to hide is behind a closed door on the 2nd floor. The only problem with this strategy is that the horde will likely destroy all the doors and windows on the 1st floor while trying to chase the helicopter. Not a big deal if it's a random house, but not great if you're hiding out in your base. The second option is to run away, preferably to the countryside with lower zombie population density. This is easiest if you have access to a car. The helicopter will see and chase you, but it doesn't really matter if there are no zombies around to make a deadly horde. You can get a little bit of warning before the event if you get your hands on a radio with the emergency broadcast system. The station is randomized for every playthrough, so you'll need a little luck in order to find it. It'll give you weather updates every hour and warn you of the helicopter with the message "Air activity detected." This event will only happen once with default settings. Now, the other noise event you need to watch out for is the house and car alarms. By default, they're not very common, but every time you step into a car or a home, there is a chance to set off an alarm. If you do, the loud noise will draw zombies nearby, and the easiest thing to do is just get out of the area. There are also random meta events like screams and gunshots. They exist to move zombies around and can unexpectedly bring a small horde to your base. So do keep an eye out for zombies if you hear one. They're nowhere near as loud as the helicopter though, and rarely something you need to worry about. And lastly, prepare for endgame challenges. If you made it this far, you're already a skilled survivor. Now it's time to ensure your long-term success. Time will bring you challenges in the world, starting with water and power shutoff. Without anyone to keep the services running, the water and power will eventually shut off. By default, this can happen anytime between day 1 and 30. You'll need to find a new source of renewable water and learn to use generators to power your base. Increase zombie numbers. As time passes, the number of zombies will increase, especially around large towns and cities, reaching its peak on day 28. You'll need to work on improving your gear, leveling your combat skills, and looting for better weapons so that you can manage larger hordes. Food shortages. Fresh food will begin to spoil after the power goes out, and canned supplies will dwindle. To survive, you need to learn to live off the land and find renewable sources of food. Leveling up skills like farming, fishing, trapping, and cooking can help you keep your character healthy. Winter. The final challenge in Zomboid is the cold. In winter, even living off the land becomes difficult with scarce natural resources and freezing temperatures. Recommended settings. If you're finding combat too difficult or you're struggling to survive the first few days, here are the settings I'd recommend changing to make the game more manageable. First, from the main menu title screen, select Options, and then under Aim Outline, change the drop-down from ranged weapons to any weapon. What this will do is add a green outline to the combat targets when they're within range. This is very helpful when learning to fight with isometric perspective. Next, let's set up a new game in Custom Sandbox. For the spawn location, I'd recommend Riverside or Rosewood. They both have lower zombie populations than the other two. Now, in sandbox options, at the bottom, change the preset from Apocalypse to Survivor. This will change a few settings to make combat easier. There are a few more options you can change depending on how difficult you're finding the game. Under Population, you can change the zombie count from normal to low. Under Character, you can check Starter Kit. This will allow you to spawn with some basic resources to get you started. If you find that you're getting infected very often, under Zombie Lore, you can change its transmission to saliva only. This means that you'll only get the zombie infection from bites. And lastly, in advanced zombie options, change the population peak to day 60 or more. That way the hordes will become larger more gradually. Now, I won't recommend a specific build because I think the best way to play is to choose what appeals to you. Maybe even create a character based on yourself. Just stay away from Sunday Driver, it is the worst trait ever created. Bonus: mods. Now, before I wrap up this guide, I want to briefly mention mods and quickly show you how to install them. The Project Zomboid modding community is one of the best I've ever seen, and you can find mods for anything you could possibly want. It really opens up a whole new dimension to this game. Now, to install a mod, select mods from the main menu title screen and click OK on the pop-up. At the top, you'll be able to see a blue bar. On the right-hand side of the bar, you'll see a button that says Get Mods Here. This will open a new page with the Steam Workshop. From here, you can browse through mods and filter the categories. Once you've found one you like, click on subscribe and click back to game in the top right. You may need to relaunch the game for the mod to show up in the list. Once you see it in the list, click enable and then start a new game as normal. You can also subscribe to the mods directly from the Steam Workshop page from any browser, as long as you're logged into your account. Now, a great mod I'd recommend for new players is the Skill Recovery Journal. It can be a lifesaver if you're starting out, so you don't lose hours of progress. When I play Project Zomboid, these are the items I always have in my backpack. What items do you never leave home without? Let me know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel for more survival game content. Thanks for watching.